BIC episode number 79, and we've got salt. So much salt. Yes, we're going to talk about the Western Conference Finals where Dallas has let us down. And we have reasons that we may discuss related to that. And as a subject matter expert on salt, Eric is here to assist us with his scintillating analysis. And then we'll talk about actually what you can do when you've got certain types of cards. I was talking about chasing after some whales the other day in a previous episode, and then in the course of this conversation, we'll discuss what happens if you have a big card that maybe doesn't fit anymore, and then maybe you sell it. So a little bit of those two things. That and more in this episode of the BIC podcast. At this point in time, when it comes to this,
don't give me credit anymore for the guitar solo. There was a period.
I feel like you haven't tried as hard. I feel like you let down. You're kind of just going through the motions at this point. Like I'm gonna need to see the energy, Eric. If you want credit, I'm gonna need to see the energy.
Right. Next Monday, I will show off the energy. I will put out the energy because I just feel like since maybe episode 5 of this run, I just haven't gotten the credit for the guitar solo.
Because you've rested on your laurels, Eric. Listen, yep. I need you to bring the type of fire and passion that you bring to watering your lawn or a car on your lawn. We'll talk about it on Friday. But for now,
Friday tease.
That's the kind of energy that I need from you, Eric. Anything short of that, we're not even discussing it.
All right.
Nope. Yeah. Not even talking about it.
Next week, I'll bring the heat.
That's right. That's all I'm saying. But as I said earlier, I have a little bit of salt. And I have enough salt to turn the ocean into the Dead Sea. Hashtag scholarship. The point is that I wasn't too pleased with this outcome. So we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about this. And by a little bit of time, probably a while. But the point is, I'm going to put a timestamp on it. So mercifully, for the audio listener or whoever, if you really don't care about listening to the Western Conference complaining, then I am going to give you a timestamp so that you can skip ahead to the actual card-related topic, which we will also get to. So we will also do that. So I've got a few things that I could talk about to go off the top, but obviously the Edmonton Oilers advanced in the Western Conference Finals in Game 6 to go to the Stanley Cup Final, where they would be playing the Florida Panthers. They will be playing them, and that should be an interesting series. Now, I'm going to lead this by saying I will probably not watch any of it, but there are a couple of reasons for it, because honestly, Florida and Edmonton really, I don't care. Because for me, and I'm just leading this off, by the way, it could have been Edmonton beating anybody else in the Western Conference, and my answer would have still been the same. Edmonton and Florida is not a compelling matchup for me, regardless. But I think there's 3 main groups that are particularly interested in this. Number 1 are the McDavid collectors and bag holders who are like, oh, please, for the love of all that is holy, McDavid, hoist the cup. This is it. Our ship is sailing. That's one group.
Okay, hold on. I have a very good friend that lives in Boston. Nick Foligno is an acquaintance, not a very good friend.
Not with that attitude. Now Nick Foligno will never be a friend.
I'm talking about Marcel. Marcel is my best friend of all time. But Nick is an acquaintance that I know professionally.
Sorry, Nick, you've been friend zoned. This is terrible.
I'd like to be friends with him. If Nick wants to be friends, I'm all
Actually, it's worse. He's been acquaintance zoned, Brandon. Like, it's even worse. He hasn't even been friend zoned by Eric.
No, Nick Foligno is acquaintance zoned, and he's one of the nicest people I've ever met in my life. So much that it scares me. But I have this other friend in Boston, very high-end collector in all sports. He collects and invests big-time cards. It's not up to me right now, without his permission, to give his name or the cards he owns, because they're huge. Stupid huge. And he has picked up some huge McDavid cards. Low numbers, 1 of 1s, patches, auto. The grail of McDavid grails. And he texts me constantly about what's happening with the series that Edmonton has been. So since the playoffs, constantly getting bombarded with texts with his excitement that his cards are increasing in value with every series won. And with last night's just future legendary goal. That goal was just filthy. And him getting to the finals, his card value comes up a little bit more. Now, he could have a stinker of a finals because it's all anyone really cares about, right? It's not how you get there. They care about what happens. If he has a stinker in the finals, gets hurt in the finals, or they just simply lose in the finals, all this stuff that he's, you know, all this value that he's gained, that he believes that he's gained, is going to nosedive off a cliff. So I'm backing up what you're saying, that the high end McDavid collectors, which this gentleman is one of the biggest, he has got all his eggs in one basket.
Yeah. And but I will say this, considering the history of a lot of those cards, I don't think, look, I don't want to spoil this for the McDavid folk. If he wins the Stanley Cup, that is going to be huge for him. It's going to help his legacy. It's going to solidify the floor on that card. It's going to position it in a certain category, because having a Stanley Cup, along with his other accomplishment, is going to put him in a certain tier, in a certain echelon. So what it does is it enhances the floor. Don't expect it to like double. That's not going to happen. That at this stage, there's already a lot of value built in. Like, there's already an expectation. There's already a hope built into some of the pricing that he would win. So him winning kind of just validates that. So don't expect the price to suddenly go crazy. But what it will do is it will solidify the value, and it will, for some folks, it'll make them more comfortable to dip money into that pool. But I think where that would pay dividends would be in the future. But as I said, that's one category of person that's very excited about this. The second category of folks is like the Canadians who just want a Canadian team to win the Stanley Cup at all costs. Oh, yeah. That's really like they're emotionally invested in this. So, and with them, I'm going to put the Edmonton folk in this as well. And realistically, them and basically Florida Panthers fans. So I've lumped the Canadians together as, rooting for the team for this reason, including the Edmonton Oilers fans, who obviously are Edmonton Oilers fans. So they have a reason to be invested in this. And then there's the Florida Panthers guy who throws a rat.
Guys, like that guy. Throw a rat, baby.
The point, though, is that there is a guy, Florida man, literally Florida man, who will be for this. The point is that they're there. But these are the groups, Eric. These are the groups that are basically, all the rest of us are like, I'll take it or leave it.
Do we want to start getting into that stuff right now, or do you want to?
We'll do the prediction. We'll do prediction in a minute. I
have a few things to say about.
Yeah, I want to lay in the foundation first. Let me bitch and moan about the Dallas thing for a minute. Brandon, I sense from the pre-discussion, I almost feel like Brandon is going to be a man of Zen. Maybe not of peace, but maybe of Zen. Who knows? We'll see. Or maybe, we'll all be able to talk about how Jason Robertson let us down and he is a failure and the punt man has crushed everything. It's like, it's horrible. It's just tragic. Tragic. I had to go there. So anyway, so what I'm going to say is this. A lot of it did play out in the scenario that I did play in there, because when I looked at it, you had two ways you could go with this. I think Dallas was the better team, but that doesn't mean you execute. In reality, game 3 was really the only game in which we got a chance to see the full potential, which actually makes it more disappointing that they didn't fulfill that potential. The last 3 games, they scored 4 goals. That isn't going to cut it. 3 games, 4 goals, And by the way, if I remove game 3, which was very good, as I said, game 3 was a complete performance. From beginning to end, it was a complete performance for the team. If I remove game 3, they average less than 2 goals per game. Against a team that can be very high octane, that is also not going to get the job done. Averaging less than 2 goals per game, not good. And removing that game 3 makes a lot of the other stats look not so great. And I'm also looking at it from the perspective of they've got a lot of young players, which is good, but the vaunted scoring depth didn't really come into play in a lot of this. In reality, Edmonton had more different goal scorers than Dallas did in that series. I think Edmonton had 11 different players who scored a goal for them versus Dallas had 7. And Dallas came into it with 8-20 goal scorers, and that was the whole thing, the balanced offense and everything. And it still ended up being certain specific players who pretty much carried the load on that whole thing. So I think it was very interesting. I've got some other stats that I want to throw at it, but Brendan, I defer the floor to you if you want to add in some items or some for initial thoughts.
So I'm going to be realistic about this. First of all, it sucks getting to the Western Conference Finals 2 years in a row and losing yet again. But there's scenarios like remove this series and throughout the entire playoffs, there was some highly missed opportunities. They put themselves in bad positions. They seem to enjoy playing against against adversity, and I don't think that's the best recipe for success. And it happened last year against Vegas. They had opportunities last year. I believe it was, if my old man memory can be correct on this, I think game 1 and 2 both were overtime losses against Vegas last year. And it's just when you are continuously playing with your back against the wall against good teams, it makes it even more difficult to win and advance. And yes, they played a hell of a game last night and still lost. I props to Edmonton for somehow only getting 10 shots on goal and winning the damn game. I don't understand that.
I can actually explain that, but please continue.
Yeah, well, there were good shots. It still 10 shots on goal was like incredible for Dallas to hold them to 10, but then for them to win with only 10, that was pretty damn impressive.
Yeah.
But really, they are a good team, but I'll be honest, I didn't want to play Edmonton. They are a different team. They're high powered, whereas Dallas isn't. You had two opposite styles going against each other. And Edmonton is more flashy, they're faster, they play well together, and Dallas sometimes has to get that lucky bounce. They have to get that lucky shot sometimes. They try to do more set plays, and sometimes they get careless with that. But overall, congrats to Edmonton. You can't take away the fact that the top 5 points leaders, or top 5 in points, 4 of them are on Edmonton. They have 4 players accounting for over 100 points. And one of those players that is those top 4 is not even the guy who happens to be leading in goals, who also happens to be on Edmonton. So they're obviously, playing very well. They're scoring at a high clip, and they were the better team. That's all you can say. They were the better team. They wanted it more. They played better. They were the better team. It just sucks, and it's kind of coincidental. I think I mentioned this previously, but it's kind of interesting that last year in 6 Western Conference Finals, we lost to Jack Eichel, and this year, 6 games, Western Conference Finals, we lose to Connor McDavid. So, go 2015 draft class.
So I'll touch on a couple of things. So one of them, because Brandon mentioned a few things. So Eric, I came prepared. I had a night to sleep on it. And after a night of careful sleep on it, my salt factory was running overnight. My salt factory was running the same way that the Pro Set printers were running in the 1990s. They were running 24 hours. They were running full steam ahead. Damn the torpedoes. We're going ahead.
You have got to be tired if you're comparing yourself to the Pro Set run. You have got to be a tired man. Right?
The salt factory was in full steam ahead, Eric. I got salt for days. But the salt also came with hashtag scholarship. Okay. I didn't just come with salt. I came with scholarly salt. Well, so it's going to be even better. So here's the thing. So I agree with a couple of things that Brandon said, but one of them that I don't agree with, I don't agree they play better, and I don't agree they were the better team. I agree that they wanted it more. That's important, because in hockey, that is a very critical thing, because you can be the better team and still lose, flat out. And that happens all the time. Now, I want to differentiate 2 things. One of the things that I talked about, and we talked about on the Discord and everything, I talked about pelting a Skinner and getting shots on net, which is what they did in Game 6, which is good. They didn't do that in most of the series, which is bad. In Game 6, they did, which again is good. The problem is, and I want to make a distinction here because it's important, getting shots on net is critical. But if you fire a puck from 180 feet away and it goes in the direction of the net and the goaltender taps it with their stick, that is a shot.
Yes,
It is also a shot if you get a wide open net and you fire it there and the goaltender sprawls his entire body and barely clips it. That is also a shot. They're not
Yes.
equal. They're not the same thing.
This
They're
is
both
true.
considered a shot, but there's a big difference between one and the other. One is a very dangerous shot that can potentially go in, and the other one is basically a harmless shot that you can ignore. You shoot it into the goalie's chest, that is a shot, but that's a harmless shot, especially if they don't give up a rebound. What I'm looking for is, I'm not just looking for shots. I'm looking for shots that create dangerous situations. I'm looking for shots that can create rebounds. But in order for that to work, there has to be somebody there to collect the rebound. And what happened a lot in Game 6 is that Edmonton, the way I watched that game, Edmonton was content to have 10 shots. They weren't trying to have more than 10 shots. They were like, we're going to take opportunities, because all you got to do is look the last two games. Edmonton scored 5 goals in those 2 games. 4 of them were on the power play. Edmonton didn't care to get shots. They wanted high percentage shots on the power play because their power play is lethal. And what's funny is that Dallas had actually held down their power play for the majority of the series up until the last 2 games, where they scored 4 goals on the power play. Both goals in Game 6 were on the power play. So all of a sudden, they were able to click their power play. And by the way, their power play in Game 6 only had 2 shots. So it doesn't matter if you only have 2 shots if they're well-placed, beautiful shots on a power play, which is what you want.
Well, on the flip side, just to mention the power play thing, again, you're not going to win when you go, what were they, 0 for 13, Dallas?
Yeah,
in the series.
It was basically what I'm saying is that special teams,
opportunity.
Special teams, actually, Dallas didn't score a single point on the power play, whereas Edmonton especially late in the series, those last 2 games, late in the series, they work 100% on the power play, literally 100%. So when you're 100% on the power play in an elimination game, Eric, it's not unreasonable to suggest you're probably going to win. So Edmonton could have cranked it up if they really want. By the way, they played, and so for this, I will give Edmonton credit. They played tremendous team defense. They did not allow Skinner to face dangerous shots. They allowed him to face safe shots, which means he was able to rack up save after save after save for the majority of the game. Dallas was getting shots off, but I never saw really the dangerous plays. There weren't too many of those. What's funny, in the Game 3 where things worked out and J-Rob got his hat trick, the 3rd goal was actually a bad goal, but it worked because he fired the shot anyway. It was actually a bad angle goal. Skinner should have been right up against the post, and because he wasn't, it was sloppy. He was able to shoot it basically behind and get it to bounce off and behind him. It shouldn't have gone in. If Skinner had been fundamentally sound, it wouldn't have gone in at all. But the point is, they were firing. So if you're firing shots and creating those opportunities, you force Skinner to have to play where he can make mistakes like that. But if he's getting safe shots and the rest of the team, what's funny about the way that the Edmonton played that game, and it was brilliant if you really think about it. I've talked about how Modano and Dallas, how they fortunes changed when they started building up the roster, but then when Ken Hitchcock basically told Modano to play a 2-way game. He wanted him to play a 2-way game. And the reason was because he goes, we know you can skate like the wind. We know you've got speed. We know you've got skill. We know you can control your stick and do all this. Well, imagine if you do that on a forecheck. Instead of just worrying about scoring goals, what if you do that on a forecheck? Well, on Edmonton, you got a bunch of guys like that. You got McDavid, who can skate like the wind, so he can score, yes. Set up an incredible assist, yes. But he can also turn around and become a dangerous forechecker. He can go chase after you and go get the puck. What I was watching Dallas try to make all these passes. And the whole series, it was very frustrating. I watched him try to make pass after pass after pass and then dump off the puck. I watched Jason Robinson. I'm not just going to pick on him, but I watched him literally make a pass up against the boards, and then he turned his head and realized there was nobody there. Who are you passing to? So I watch stuff like that all the time. It was like, you're passing it when you're surrounded by like 2 Edmonton players or 3 Edmonton players, and you're trying to make this weird blind pass. And it's like, and then Edmonton picks up the puck. Well, if you keep doing that, guess what happens? I watched Jamie Benn in the game skip on 2 specific in Game 6. He didn't get a shot off. He had 2 specific opportunities where he was right there in point blank range. He could have fired the shot on net. He tried to make a pass. Both times he was intercepted and went the other way.
And not only were they passing too much, but in my opinion, the passes were sloppy as hell.
Yes.
So they were not clean passes. They're like, if you're passing and look at that was something I was like, I may not have like said it correctly, but when I was talking about the way Edmonton like dumps off and stuff like that, they have clean passes where they're setting up the other guys. Like they're like bang, bang, clean passes and giving opportunity. Vegas is really good at that. Colorado was pretty good at that with McKinnon and stuff. But when you were looking at Dallas, their passes were just so damn sloppy that they couldn't set guys up. They were having to get some of those goals, like you mentioned, where it was bouncing off the shoulders. I think Wyatt had at least one goal that was similar, where he shot it at a weird angle, it hit the goalie in the pads, and went in. So they were. It was almost like they were getting the bounce goals, and just I feel some of the plays were careless, but it is what it is. It could be worse, and this isn't a knock to Eric for those out there, even though it could be. It could be worse. They've made it to the conference finals 2 years in a row, so they're obviously a good team. They just can't. They haven't gotten over that hump yet. So.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, and I'll talk about the future, and then we'll talk about the finals. But I'll finish off on this thought. Like I said, I came prepared with some hashtag scholarship. I wanted to make sure we got the numbers here as we talk about it. Eric, sight unseen. If I told you this game 6 is a game where looking at the stat sheet is deceiving. It is actually does you a disservice if you didn't actually watch the way the game played out and the flow and everything. What if I told you that one team outshot the other 34-10? What if I told you they won 56.6% of the faceoffs? What if I told you they only had 4 penalty minutes, so only 2 power plays in the entirety of the game versus 3 power plays on the other side? They got 31 hits to the other team's 15. They out-hit them. They outshot them. They won more faceoffs. Giveaways and takeaways even. What if I tell you all that? Who won this game?
I am going to Vegas with that information, and I am betting on that team to win.
And it sounds like they should.
Yes.
That team was basically shut out for the majority of that game and lost by 1. It's that just looking at the stat sheet here, very deceiving. This does not indicate the game that we actually watched them play, because I saw Edmonton play a style that I'm very familiar with. It was a style where you get up ahead and then you lock it down. And they were getting shots, but like I said, they were harmless shots. A lot of those shots were not dangerous shots. They were counting, but Skinner was very comfortable. I think I saw one of the things they zoomed in on him, and he's like kind of just bobbing his head around. He's chill. So that tells me that he wasn't having a hard day at the office there. He was having a very easy day at the office in that game 6. And it was a situation where at that point, then you're going to have a tough time. But then you go look at the final, it's like it was a 1-goal game, which it was.
Yeah.
But Dallas didn't really get that opportunity. They didn't score until the 3rd.
Well, talking about Skinner and how he had an easy day at the office, let's be honest. Since game 4, when they got up 2-0, he didn't really have much to deal with since then. They didn't score the rest of that game. The following game, they only scored 1 when it was a empty net situation. So, 6-on-5, and then the 1 goal in game 6. So it just goes back to they weren't creating opportunities. I mean, hey, I get your point with Skinner. He does have the potential to be Swiss cheese.
For most of the playoffs, he was. That's the funny thing is, but other teams did those things to him, and they actually in the game itself. That's why I was trying to pull it up here, but I wasn't able to get it to show up properly for me. I was able to actually borrow the graphic. This is the graphic they showed on the broadcast. It was shots against games 5 through 7, and what they were showing is this is the Oilers. They were showing the first round against the Kings. They were showing against the Canucks these different games, and against the Stars. All the games they showed were the team. The shots against was in the 20s and below. Edmonton won all of them. The only game they lost was when the Canucks got 35 shots on them.
Right.
That was the only game that they lost out of that grouping. So when Edmonton can control it, now, like I said, this game, Dallas did that. They got above that number. But as I also said, Edmonton was very content. The fact that they only got 10 shots, they switched. They basically said, "Oh no, please try. We don't care. We're going to play this game. We're going to chase you around the whole thing. The clock's still running. We're going to chase you all night."
1 or 2 of the 10 shots that they counted for Edmonton, I don't even like the announcers even said, I don't know where they got the 10th one, and I think it was one that ricocheted off of a player or something and slowly slid down to Ottinger to stop and pass off to a player. So it was like they didn't even really take 10 shots.
Yeah,
It
they were
was
not. They were very content. Once they got up to nothing, they basically just locked it down and said, "We're unless you can show us that you can
Unless
actually
you
generate
compete,
real offense, we are completely content to take the rest of the night here. We'll just chase you around. We'll chase you around with the puck as long as you want until you get tired." And Dallas never really threatened. So, and somebody actually did. So, like I said, you got the shots. Well, then there's also some the scorekeepers. They also keep track of what I can't remember how it's phrased, Eric. Is it like just dangerous shots or like
Yeah.
there's like a specific stat separate?
Right.
Well, the two teams in that category, Brandon.
It's not just shot attempts because, like you said, you know, you can shoot it from, you're behind your own net, and if it's on goal,
and it would count as a shot if it hits the net.
That's a shot. So these are actual the statistic you're talking about is this could have actually scored. This is like
because it was in a more dangerous position, or you were open, or the goaltender was you and the goaltender, something.
Opportunity attempts.
Yes. And what's funny, Brendan, is with the shot discrepancy, when they added up the dangerous shots, the two teams were even. So in reality, Edmonton was maximizing their shots that they were taking. Most of those shots were dangerous shots. They were shots that had a higher probability of going in. Dallas was getting those, but over the course of a volume of otherwise weak shots that really weren't. They were
without knowing what the stats say. I'm going to guess it was 4.
I think it was 6. I think it was 6 for each. So most of Edmonton's shots were of the dangerous variety. A couple of them were kind of weak shots, but then you think 34 for Dallas, and like 6 of them were actually dangerous shots. The majority of them were not.
So I know Rupe, he had one.
He had one clean shot
off the bar. Yeah. But
that was one of the better attempts. And what's funny is he wasn't trying to shoot very much either. So let me shift this ahead though. Now, like I said, I promised that we wouldn't spend too much time on it. So let me shift ahead a little bit. One of the things that concerns me, and this is something I've seen with a lot of the teams that I follow, and I'm a big believer in this. I'm a big believer in different sports teams having windows. What disappoints me about this one is that they faced 2 very tough matchups in round 1 and round 2. A lot of things went right that allowed them to get to this situation. And I said earlier, Edmonton is a talented team. But out of the 3 teams, they are the, I'm putting this in quotation marks, worst of the 3 teams. The other 2 teams were the last 2 defending Stanley Cup champions. Very strong teams that have tons of talent as well. And I feel like they were more balanced than what Edmonton was bringing to the table. And Dallas was able to get by them because they do have talent as well. I feel like this is a major league squandered opportunity because now, Brandon was talking about how they weren't able to generate these things. This was the same team that talked about having 820 goal scorers in the regular season, which tells you that the regular season doesn't mean shit. It doesn't. It's a different style of game.
I think the Bruins may have proved that last
year. It may have proven that, yeah. So what's funny is, so I don't want to hear about anything that happens in the regular season because it's irrelevant.
And Florida before that, because Florida 2 years ago set the all-time record and won the President's Trophy. The Bruins and lost immediately, I believe. And then the Bruins showed up and said, hey, hold our beer. We can be even worse by beating your record during the regular season and setting the all-time wins record, with winning the President's Trophy, and just looking like complete dog shit in that first round last year and getting their asses handed to them. So
some would dare suggest a Hindenburg-like ending.
Some would, and they would be correct.
Mm-hmm. So the point is that it's all well and good, it's all nice, but playoff style hockey is very different. The amount of space you have is smaller. The margin for error is smaller. The little silly dump passes that in the regular season are perfectly fine because the other team is content to give you some space to try that. In the postseason, teams are going to punish you for that. They will take the puck away and they will get their own opportunities.
And that brings me to my opinion and my analysis of watching the game, and which would lead me to what I think is going to happen in the final. But Dallas is a very good team. All 3 of us picked Dallas to win. The professional gamblers picked them to win. The NHL, analysis people, all picked them to win. There was one quote in particular that said, it's funny that Dallas had to get all the way to the Western Conference final to play, to have their easiest opponent. They were supposed to win. So why didn't they? And the reason is, and this again will lead to what I think is going to happen in the finals if we want to, move on, is you have the best player on the planet Earth as of right now, not of all time, but right now, today, the best player on planet Earth, and you let him skate around. Dallas, except for Jamie Benn, I did not see any grit, nastiness. You are not skating another inch in our direction type of attitude. You even look at our goalie, I will put you in the 5th row. None of that. They tried to go style versus style, okay? Flashy versus flashy. Well, sorry, you are not going to outflash Edmonton's offense. You're just not going to do it. If you look at what the Panthers did to Boston this year, we have David Pastrnak. It was like he wasn't even there, except trying to fight Tkachuk. I don't think his name was mentioned throughout the series, because what Florida did to the Bruins was out-Bruined them. They were not going to give them an inch. They played on the edge. Sometimes they crossed that line and went over the edge. They were not going to give them an inch. They were not going to give a former 60-goal scorer an inch. And that's how they beat Boston, by out-Bruinsing them.
I think he's using Bruin as a verb.
And Dallas didn't do that to Edmonton. Now we're going to get to the final. And we can have our picks, whenever.
We will. But before you continue to the final, I want to piggyback off your point. I'm going to quote a wise man. It might be quoting from no, not you. I'm going to quote from the Discord, the sage words of a wise man. During the hockey game in question, my issue on the McDavid goal was that they let him treat them like pylons. I'll give up the goal, but decapitate the guy. There have to be consequences for skating around like you can do what you want.
Are you that wise man?
Yes, you're damn right I am.
Yeah,
I said, kill this man. I said, look, if McDavid's going to score the goal, it's pretty and all. Listen, it was a pretty goal. Don't get me wrong.
It's going to be.
I do appreciate it. I do appreciate a good pretty goal. But that's a situation where you need Jamie Benn to be, congratulations, that was awesome. Now I'm going to murder you.
Yes.
Because this is where the murdering commences. Yeah. And I said, after 2 periods, if it continues this way, which it was continuing in the way that I wasn't satisfied with it, commence goonery. At that point, what do you have to lose? If Edmonton is going to win in that situation, fine. Congratulations, you win. You will be in the emergency room.
How did Canada win the 72 Cup?
Goonery.
By who did what? Do you remember that? I mean, it's epic.
Bobby Clark broke Buddy's leg.
Bobby Clark took his hockey stick like a baseball bat and came right down on the ankle of Russia's best player. And that guy was gone. Now, I don't think that was right. Clark should have been thrown out of the tournament. That's not what we're looking for. But the greatest moment, your Canada's miracle on ice, okay? But I just so happened to have this 72 puck right here in front of me, signed by my good friend Marcel Dion. This is Canada's miracle on ice. This is their greatest hockey moment. And most hockey historians will point to the fact it was won because Bobby Clark was a goon and broke a man's ankle. So
now I want to make a very important. Brandon looks like he wants to make a point, but before we get there, I want to make one important thing clear. And I need to make sure, for those of you that see the video, I need to make sure that I put this on the bottom of the screen so we're all on the same page.
Right.
Hashtag man of peace.
Man of peace.
So I'm gonna need earmuffs for about 20 seconds. So as I said, I advocate for peace. I am here for nothing but peace.
Who else advocates peace. Do we know anybody in Nova Scotia that might advocate for peace?
Perhaps. So the important thing is, for about 10 seconds here, you fucking kill the guy. You take his head off. You destroy him. You rip out his head, hold his spine in front of his family. End scene. So the point is, man of peace.
Man of peace.
The point is, you do this so that you send a message to the others, and then they cower in fear. Brandon, they need to cower in fear. There was no fear.
No.
That's I think Eric had a. I'm gonna give him some credit. He had a good point there.
Okay. Go ahead.
That team is not. They're not the. There are players and times that get physical, but their game isn't physical.
It's very soft.
In most games they get out hit by a pretty good margin. I mean,
and by the way,
again, I'm going back to last year.
Fine. In the regular season, that's fine because you got more space. The intensity level isn't up to that level, and you're allowed to play a more skilled type game.
Mm-hmm.
The criticism about the McDavid goal is that McDavid got to do a regular season move in the postseason. And we will, so I'll let Brandon finish his point. But to Eric's point from earlier, Florida will punish him if he tries to do that. If he tries to do that exact same move, there will be like 4 guys on Florida who will go over there and fight this man. And they will fight his friends. And if his family shows up to the game, they will fight them too.
Well, one reason, and I'm not going to say the whole team, but I think this Dallas team is a bit young. I think you have, you got Stankoven, you have Wyatt, Robertson's still young. Even Miro, he, in a sense, is still kind of young. You do have the veterans, Sagan, Pavelski, Ben. But overall, I think a large majority of them are young and they're not physical. They're trying.
The second point I think is more relevant than the first. Them being young, they'll keep playing. They'll become veterans. Robertson, look, I like poking fun at you, the whole Robertson pump and everything.
I do.
He's never going to be a physical player. That's not his game.
No,
he does his best when he has.
He was more physical this year than he was last. I will say,
but he's never going to be physical. He's never going to be physical. He needs teammates that will complement him and create space for him, and then he's allowed to do the things he can do. He needs complementary pieces to make his life easier, especially in that.
I'll tell you a guy that I'm actually kind of liking on the team though, because I see flashes of that physicality. I seen that there was fire in him because he was the goal scorer from yesterday's game. But Mason Marchment, he will lay somebody out. He is physical. He is a big dude, and you could see when he scored that goal, like there was a fire in him. Like he was frustrated out there, scored the goal, and I think it was Sagan that was with him on it, if I remember correctly. But I kind of am liking his style of play, and but yeah, they gotta lay bodies out. Stop playing
in his prime. In his prime, because I'm going to say he's outside of his prime now. So before we get to the Cup Finals, and like I said, folks, hopefully you took advantage of the timestamp if you wanted to skip the hockey talk, because we needed to discuss this at some length. Eric has spent hours studying the hockeys. He doesn't know anything about it. He was studying the hockeys on Wikipedia so he could participate in the segment. So we want to make sure we use his education.
I got halfway through though. So no tough questions.
It's important. So real quick, a couple of things. So it'll be to the future. Funny that Brandon mentions Marchand. So this is why I'm concerned. On the Discord, Wes and I had a nice little conversation post-game. And I like having conversations like this with Wes because Wes is very even keel. And we generally agree on a lot of points as well. But we look at it from two different perspectives. He's more of a glass half full guy. I'm a little bit more glass half empty because, and I mentioned a little earlier about the whole window thing. I'm a big believer in windows. And sometimes a team grows into a window, and sometimes a window is presented in front of you, and you must be willing to seize the moment, seize the day, because sometimes your window is smaller than you think sometimes. Sometimes you grow into it and it expands, but it depends. The late 90s Dallas team had a nice little window there, and they capitalized on it. They were able to get to 2 cup finals, win one, and get to game 6 in the second one, where they played a great New Jersey team, and they lost in overtime of game 6. There's no shame in that. There's no shame in the game losing to a great New Jersey team in that period with Brodeur at the peak of his powers. But you also want a Stanley Cup as well. So there's no shame in that game. And they were able to still be good, and they were able to have it one more little run at the end of Modano's. He was already past his prime. I think it was 07. They had a different team with Turco, but that was not the same. And they knew that was basically their last dance. Like, it was done. After that, it was finito. This team, you look at all the young players and you say to yourself, oh, well, the window must be wide. It's like, well, the thing is, the draw this year was actually quite favorable. You're not necessarily going to get a draw like that. And again, I said a moment, it's funny he mentions Marchand. Well, Marchand is going to be a free agent. He is now a free agent coming into the next year. So he may not be back. And Pavelski is 39 years old. He will also be a free agent. He's also this year, he wasn't able to contribute a lot, but in playoffs past, including even the year before and things like that, this season, those two players, Pavelski and Marchand, contributed to 52 goals in the regular season. Those are 52 goals that you're taking off the board because both of those guys are free agent. And the likelihood is, for the money they're going to want, Pavelski may retire. So regardless, it may not even be, right. 39. That may be the end of the line for him because he wasn't effective in the playoff. But in the regular season, he was still good. Marchand was very effective in both, but he may be looking at more money, reasonably so. And you've got Jamie Benn, who is past his prime. Again, one of my favorite guys, but let's face it, he was on the decline prior to the Renaissance last season. We joked about the Renaissance, but that was an aberration. He was on the decline. He was very much on the decline prior to random 30-goal season that was not expected. This season, it diverted back. He was 21 goals this year. He barely scraped to 20 goals. He's still the captain. He's the longest tenured captain in the team's history. He's got one more year, and then he's a free agent, but he's a $9.5 million cap hit. This is relevant. This is important. He's 34, going into 35.
Oh, I thought he was older.
He's a $9.5 million cap hit, and he's already declining. His style of game, where he combined the physical with the skill, it's starting to fade. She's starting to age out of it already. He can't do it anymore that way. He can still goon it up. He still has moments where he'll show you flashes of that skill, but the combination isn't there anymore. Not all the time. And I don't expect it to get better. Seguin is not quite the player he was. He's struggling to get back to that form. He's also a $9.5 million cap hit. So remember what I said a moment ago about your two free agents? Those are two of your free agents there. Well, you're probably not going to resign either one of them realistically. And you got almost $20 million worth of cap hit on two players who are already on the decline. You're probably going to let them. Seguin's still got a couple of seasons. You're not going to re-sign Ben unless you're able to restructure to a very favorable team-friendly deal. So that may be the end of the line for him. So the point is, this core, you're going to have these young guys, but the core that had built this current group may be dismantled as soon as next season. You may already be taking pieces off. So you're hoping that the Robertson will take a leap forward. But we said a moment ago, he's not that physical type of player. He's a skill player. And if you put the right pieces around him, it can work. Rupe Hintz is great. Miro is great. Like Wyatt Johnson, great. But does that group have the components? You're hoping they all take a leap, but that may not be enough. You may need to complement with other pieces you may not have yet.
What you're going to wind up with theoretically is similar to what we had last season. You're going to have a couple, maybe 1-2 good lines, but you're not going to have the depth like they had this year. We're going down, like you said, what was it, 9-20 goal scorers or whatever, where you had several lines that when you put them out there, they were good. And part of that was, like you said, Ben was declining, and I think they were smart enough to recognize that, but know that he would protect some of the young guys, and that's why they
could do that. He could do his job. He could still do his job.
Yeah, and but they put Wyatt and Stankoven out with him, so then you had a couple young guys toe in with the vet, and then he was also protecting them young guys, and it was just like kind of balancing that line out. But yeah, I mean, the window is getting slimmer because a lot of the key cogs are their gears are starting to wear, and you got to take advantage of the opportunity. What was it? Was it the bubble year or COVID year 2020?
Yeah,
they were.
There was that year that I thought the same thing. So glad you brought up that point. And then we'll shift over to the Florida and the finals here in a second. The point is, when I saw that one, that cup final was an accident. They got there by accident. It was a fluke. But what was shameful is they had a couple of years there, including that one, where the goaltending wasn't quite up to snuff. I'm actually pretty happy with the goaltending right now. I wish we had the goaltending equivalent to that then, because it would have made it more of a series. But my point is, even if it's by accident, if you get to a cup final, you can't take it for granted that you're going to get back. And the last two Western Conference Finals years, you played Vegas, who won the Stanley Cup, by the way, a great team. So you didn't lose to a bad team. You know, no shame in the game. You lost the winners, the eventual winners. And maybe Edmonton wins. Who knows? But the point is that Western Conference Finals don't grow on trees. This has been a bit of a renaissance for Dallas since the glory days of the late 90s and early 2000s, when that team though was full of Hall of Famers. That team was stacked. You're looking at a bunch of the guys now, great young talent, but you're not going to tell me there's like 4 or 5 Hall of Famers on this team. I'm not going to go that far. We got way too many years for a lot of things to happen between now and then to see what that looks like. The point is that now as these pieces start coming off, it's not going to get easier. It's going to get tougher. And these other teams are going to get better too. So it's one of those things. This draw was a really favorable draw if you could get past those first two. That's why it's more disappointing that you missed out on the. By the way, Edmonton didn't blow them out of the water. Edmonton didn't beat them five goals a game. Edmonton struggled to put up more than a few goals on most of those games. So the point is, Edmonton wasn't blowing them out of the water despite their struggles to put the puck in the net. And if you can't beat this Edmonton team when they had some weaknesses that everybody knew about, and they weren't scoring 5 goals a game on you every game, then you think you're going to beat them if they get better? You think it's going to be easier if Vegas retools? You think it's going to be easier if Colorado retools? And then again, you're losing some pieces. So that's why I say, like, the window might be already kind of, I'm not going to say it's shutting, but I can hear the creaking sound of the hinge as the door is moving in that direction. That's my concern with this team. But we'll see. We'll reset. We'll see what they do in the offseason. But I have some concerns, is all I'll say about that. Now let's talk about Florida. We got them taking on Edmonton. We got them going on. And I agreed with Eric's point from earlier. I think they're going to be very physical. I think they're going to present a very different challenge to Edmonton. I don't think they're going to get away with, dipsy doodles and playing some silliness. I think Florida's more fundamentally sound than that. Brandon, if they try to do the figure skating thing like they did in this series a couple of times, there will be somebody there with a Florida uniform on that will punish them for it.
Yeah, I'm torn in this one because Florida you have to give them credit. They got past the Rangers and a very good Rangers team. Very good. I mean, Igor is a great goalie, and they won in 6. They were in the finals last year. So they've proven they're obviously at this moment the best team in the East. But there's something about this Edmonton team, and if they don't win, it's like all of these high stats and numbers with not just McDavid. I think Draisaitl gets overlooked because of McDavid being young and, people coining as the best player and everything, which deservingly so. But I think Draisaitl, he's kind of like the Pippen to the Jordan. And obviously they don't have the championships and the rings, but he's second fiddle to Connor McDavid. And then you look at the other guys, like I said, they have 4 of the top 5 points leaders right now in the playoffs, which is pretty incredible. I just think they have too much firepower, and they're going to be tough to beat. I'm going to say Canada's getting their cup. It's been a while. What is it, 30 years plus? Something since
93,
Canada's had it?
93.
Yeah, so 31 years. I think the cup's going to be up north. And as we're sitting here talking, Dallas lost 6-6 in the finals the last 2 years, or in the conference finals. It would suck to be Florida and make it, they're becoming Buffalo in football if that happens. But it should be a good series. I just think they got a lot of firepower.
I take your point, but in the spirit of, again, man of peace, I would never wish violence. Florida in 2.5. Break them. break them, bash the maple syrup over their heads, Florida. Feed them to the rats, and then feed the rats to the panther. Do what you must. Listen, I'm not a Patriot, Brandon. I've never claimed to be one. If a Canadian team's going to win the Stanley Cup, they're going to have to earn it. And like I said, I think this Florida team will present a good test. I think it'll present a good test. If Edmonton's going to win, they're going to have to be. There'll be full value for it because I do think they're playing a very good team as well over in Florida. And one of the things, though, to your point, historically, though, a team that gets to multiple Cup finals in hockey, it doesn't tend to play out that where they lose all of them. Most of the time, if a team makes a consecutive Cup finals, is that they take the opportunity to learn some lessons from their defeat in the prior one, and then they make corrections. The Edmonton Oilers lost to the Islanders at the end of their dynasty, and they learned something. They learned a lesson, and then that sparked their own dynasty. And the Islanders also had to beat their own demons in order to basically create that dynasty. So all of them had to face some adversity and lose in order to learn a lesson. Even the example I gave of the heyday Dallas Stars in 97-98, a lot of people don't remember, but in 97-98, they were playing the Detroit Red Wings in the Western Conference Finals. And I believe they lost in that one in 6. But that team was very clearly on the ascend. Everybody could look at them and go, this team is close, because you got to remember 97-98 Detroit, Steve Yzerman, like you've got all these guys, Brendan Shanahan, you've got all these guys at the peak. Go read how many Hall of Famers are on that team. And you're going to discover very quickly, like, damn, that was a good team. That was a really good team. And it took 6 games for them to dispatch Dallas. Dallas is very clearly in the ascent.
Was Fedorov still there?
Yes, absolutely. And he was at the peak of his powers. So that team was stacked. And they narrowly lost in the conference finals in 6 games. Detroit went on to win the Stanley Cup. And Detroit that year went and played the Washington Capitals and beat them 4-0 in the Stanley Cup. So the reason I'm mentioning this is Dallas and Detroit played a hard-fought 6-game series in the Western Conference Finals. Dallas was 2 games short of getting to the Stanley Cup. Washington was a sacrificial lamb awaiting whoever survived the West that year. With due respect to Washington, they got beaten pretty soundly. Dallas, that team was structured, they would have probably also beaten Washington. Well, here's the thing. In the world we exist today in, they got to the Stanley Cup final in 98-99. They won. They got to the Stanley Cup final in 99-2000, and they went to 6 games against another legendary great team over in Jersey. They could have gone to 3 straight Cup finals, and they were within a couple of wins of getting the 3 straight Cup finals. Well, imagine, Brandon, a couple of games turned the other way. That's a dynasty. That's a modern day dynasty. And they were that close. That's how good they were. That's a window. That's when you're talking about a window, that's what you're talking about. But that team went for it every single one of those years, and they made every move they could to try to get over the hump and get to that stage. That's what you got to get to, that point where you feel like maybe there's a missing piece. You go find that missing piece and you make it happen. But it's tough. It's easier said than done because those teams were stacked and they were good. So, Eric, prediction for the Stanley Cup Finals. I have Florida in 2.5 games. And Connor McDavid may, in fact, have his head on a pike. Again, man of peace.
Going with kind of the trend I was saying earlier, and I'm sorry I had to step away. I had to deal with something. Florida is not going to allow the Oilers to have the room and freedom that they were given by Dallas in this last round. And Florida is a very good team. Last year they were in the finals, I believe, if memory serves.
They were. Yep, this will be the second finals.
They like I said earlier, 2 years ago they were the President Trophy winners with an all-time record of wins in a season. This core group is a very good, tough, nasty team that knows how to win, and they will bleed for each other. I am not convinced there are certain players on the Oilers that would bleed for each other. I think there's players on the Oilers that will only play for themselves. They have a long history of such behavior. And I think that is how they continue to be. I also do not believe for a moment that the Oilers' goaltending is going to continue on this hot streak. I think Skinner's a good goalie. I don't think he's having a like unbelievable, memorable, awe-inspiring run in the playoffs like some goalies have had in the history of the game that you can still remember. Like, remember when so and so played that season? That was, he was standing on his head. It was unbelievable. He's not doing that. All right. I thought that Ottinger was going to do that. I expected him to have a legendary run against Edmonton, that we'd be talking about it 5 years from now. Remember when Ottinger, took, everything Edmonton could throw at him and was making saves, like crazy? He did. He was good, kept his team in it. He did not have a legendary Stanley Cup playoff performance.
I agree. I call it like a 7. I'm going to call it like a 7 out of 10. It was certainly nothing to complain about. He was not the reason they lost. It became very clear after this, as the series was progressing, that it feels like, unfortunately, and that is a bad sign, because I didn't want this to be a series where Ottinger would have to get a couple of shutouts. As it turns out, the only way they were going to win is if he got a couple of shutouts.
Yeah.
That would have been the only way, because the way they were playing, they were not generating enough. He basically had to stop everything for a couple of games, and that would have been the difference. If he had been able to do that, well, then they're winning and they go into the cup final. That would have been the difference maker, but he didn't put them out of any game. That's why I say, aside from one game where Edmonton was able to succeed quite well, all the other games, they were there. They were within striking distance, so they were kept in the game. You needed to score 3 goals. Score 3 goals, which should be good enough.
He's one of the best in the world. He's one of the best in the league. He just didn't have that Stanley Cup playoff blow your mind.
You needed a carrying performance.
That was the only thing that was good with Boston's playoff performance this year. Is Jeremy Swayman was having that type of playoff where it was freaking amazing what this kid was doing. I was just insane.
Since I'm the odd man out, and I'm gonna go and say that Canada's gonna get the cup. I look.
They've got lots of Canadian players on Florida. Come on.
Yeah.
Since we're trying to be scholarly and go stat based or whatever, I looked back on the Florida Ranger series, and for Eric's physicality note, Florida out-hit the Rangers only in 2 games. And one of them, they only out-hit them by 1 hit. And then looking at the goaltending and giving Skinner a little bit of credit, Bobrovsky he's got a 2.2 goals against average. Skinner's at 2.5. But save percentage is 0.908 to 0.897. So the goalie matchup is pretty damn similar. And I'm going Edmonton because if nothing else, if my team can't win, the team that puts them out, they got to win the damn Stanley Cup.
Well, Paul will be pleased with you. At least Paul will be very happy with you.
I've always felt that way. If you beat Boston, I want you to win the whole thing so I can say, well, hey, they lost to the Stanley Cup champs. So I get that feeling. And I know Florida did knock Boston out, and I know what I just said. But I still honestly, taking that out of the consideration, I think that they're just going to beat Edmonton up. And McDavid is going to get the ever-living garbage beat out of him. Anybody that tries to stand up for McDavid is going to get their teeth knocked out, and it's going to be nasty.
Here's
Florida
a question:
has been on the precipice of this moment for the last 3 seasons. Here's
a question, real quick.
They
Do you think, though, that the fact that we just discussed how Dallas wasn't physical, and I just said that the Rangers were hitting the shit out of Florida, that actually bodes a little bit in Edmonton's favor because they didn't get the shit beat out of them when they played Dallas? This last game, they were casually playing, obviously, with only 10 shots on goal. Maybe Florida's a little bit more battered and bruised. maybe a little bit was taken out of him. Does that
I think it
play
helps
into
that they're getting
Edmonton's
6 days.
favor?
I think you have to
Yeah.
remember they're getting 6 days off.
They're in the trainer's room getting massages every day and getting shots, anti-inflammatories, the whole thing. Those dings and boo boos are all getting, they're healing up in 6 days, and they're just getting angrier and angrier. They're like a dog on a chain with a stake just out of reach, and they're just waiting to be unleashed on that. Let that chain loose, and they're gonna kick the ever-living crap out of Edmonton. They're not gonna know
Dare
what the
you
hell.
say they are like somebody that parked on their lawn?
Can you imagine if somebody had the audacity to just pull up and just park on brand new grass that you just spent thousands of dollars planting and out there watering twice a day?
Well, for the
at
sake
like
of this
7
analogy, I'm going to call this person Connor McDavid. Go on.
Okay, and you're gonna be upset by it. It's like Florida's saying you can't just take your car and park on my lawn, and Edmonton's like, yeah,
Can't
I
park
can.
your Zamboni on my ice.
And
How dare you?
I think Mr. Tkachuk is going to chew right through his mouthpiece and absolutely attack anybody who parks their car on his lawn.
So two things, because we've literally been talking about this for an hour. So I'm gonna move us along. But so if those of you enjoyed the amateur hockey analysis hour, because we literally got an hour out of this. So we're gonna move on here in a second. But before we do, one important note that I want to make as well, kind of to what you're talking about, is that New York is also a team that can be physical. So the fact that they were close on hits does not surprise me. But also, we got to go back to what we said. Look, if there's one overarching thing that I want to convey here for anybody watching games, I don't care if it's hockey, I don't care if it's baseball, I don't care if it's football, whatever it is. Reading the stats you were pulling is good, but then I watched a little bit of the series as well, and Florida was getting good value for its hits. They weren't doing cheap hits. They were trying to hits. They were trying to do a couple of hurting bombs. They're like, if I'm going to lay into the guy, I'm going to drive him. My point here is to try to either intimidate or wear him down or do a little bit of both. By the way, New York does the same thing. So to your point, both teams were trying to batter each other, but going back to the analogy I gave from earlier, in the Western Conference, teams were killing each other. In those days, there were no laws. Claude Lemieux existed. Claude Lemieux tried to kill people. He was trying actively to murder people.
I hated him.
Everybody hated him. If you didn't have him on your team, you hated Claude Lemieux because he was a piece of trash. That man was literally trying to murder people.
People think Brad Marchand is bad. They know nothing.
Is it wrong?
Know nothing.
Is it wrong or the wrong time to say that another guy that I like, and he's not even on Dallas, but he is on the local team, and people hate him? I think Tom Wilson is a pretty damn badass hockey player. I like that he tries to beat the shit out of people.
Well, the thing is, there's a rule on teams for that guy. Look, I made the joke a moment ago, and I just said the reference. Listen, if that Dallas team going to that game 6, if that was an option, I would take Claude Lemieux now. I would have put Claude Lemieux in skates and skated him out there. And it's like, I don't even know how old Claude Lemieux is. I don't even know if he's still alive. But I will take dead old Claude Lemieux, and he would kill Connor McDavid. He would stab him with his skate. And then it's like, go ahead, try scoring a goal with a skate sticking out of your jugular. He would do it.
You're correct. Claude did not care. He cared about winning.
He was crazy. He
cared about winning Stanley Cups, and he cared about defending his team. And he played for a handful of teams. So he moved around the league a couple of times. And he just looked down and said, who am I playing for? Okay, anyone that's wearing this, I die for. And like I said, there are guys that play for Edmonton right now that would never say that.
Yeah. Look, 4-time Stanley Cup winner Claude Lemieux. He was a piece of trash, but 4-time Stanley Cup winner. The results speak for themselves.
If he was on the team that you were either playing on or you as a fan were rooting for, he was one of your all-time favorite players. Yeah. Everyone else, you'd want this man murdered. And
it was a very different era. It was because all the teams had guys like that. New Jersey had Scott Stevens, who basically ended careers. That was his job. He killed people.
He wasn't a rat.
No, but he was a guy who would basically intimidate for the center of the ice. His job was to intimidate the center. He would hit leveling hits. His job was to do that.
I watched Paul Correa die live. We've talked about
Yeah.
this several times over the years.
The point that I'm getting at, though, Eric, is that each one of these teams had a guy that had a specialty of intimidation.
Yes.
You'd have the crazy guy who would literally do anything wacky. That's Claude Lemieux. You had a guy like Scott Stevens who could destroy somebody.
Yeah.
Come down the middle of the ice with your head down. Do your dipsy doodle, Connor McDavid, and this man will drive his shoulder pad into your head and send you into the 14th row. That's his deal. That's what he does. Dallas had Darian Hatcher, who could be physical and he could push people around. That was his job. He was one of those guys.
Pronger was another one that hit you so hard you wouldn't know your name.
The point is, there were a lot of those guys. There's still guys like that in the game today, but the teams that have them like having them, because if suddenly things get a little mucky, you tap them on the shoulder. You might not see them a lot during the game, but if you tap them on the shoulder, hey, go clean that up. And that was their job. You'd send them out there. You will not have that problem going forward. So if Jason Robertson needs some room, you tap that guy on the shoulder, go kill that man. And then all of a sudden the guy that's harassing Jason Robertson goes away and Jason Robertson has room to maneuver. That's how the game was played back in that time. You need guys like that, though. Once in a blue moon, it's nice to have guys like that. Jamie Benn, like I said, unfortunately, is on the wrong side of his prime. He's already up. But he used to be that guy. And by the way, he can still get very dirty. Like he will do a questionable hit.
This is
He's
a guy
capable of such things.
Face mask. He plays tough. He'll go toe to toe with you without a face shield and take punches in the face and try to put his hand through your head.
Yep. All right. So we gave our picks. So hopefully those of you indulged us. We need some time to discuss and vent. But after we finish discussing all this, it is time to discuss more matters of peace. Like I said, man of peace. This entire thing is peace, love, peace and love. And you know what else is in favor of peace and love? AMG Collectibles. AMGcollectibles.ca and the AMG Collectibles YouTube channel. You may be wondering why it took that entire time. It's like, listen, there was a lot of violence involved. We needed to return to man of peace, and we need to get ourselves in the right frame of mind. Well, later on, this is going to drop earlier on Tuesday. Later on Tuesday, the AMG Collectibles YouTube channel, podcast is going to drop, and on that one, there will be peace. But we will be showing wonderful cards that came in the store. There will be some new products that came in as well. I was able to get a quick heads up and look at that. There's some nice stuff going on there, which is going to be very good. So we're going to have that, and we'll be able to showcase that and talk about that. More peaceful, calm endeavors. After you're done ripping out the spine of your enemies with great peace. With great peace.
I want to let you know, if we choose to, I have permission to show those cards I sent you.
Oh, the ones that you were talking about for the McDavid? Tell you what, let's do that right at the end, because I do want to talk about the card topic, but we'll truncate. We're going to truncate the card topic a little bit. We had a lot of fun with that hockey topic. Eric acquitted himself very well for somebody who read a Wikipedia page on it just before the show.
Only half.
It's pretty good. It's not bad. Brandon, not bad. Decent effort, I would say.
Solid. I can imagine if I read the whole page.
Woo! The whole page. Wow. Then you know what icing is? That's a world I don't even know we can live in.
And just to put a button and solidify all of this hockey talk, we all need to give Eric a big golf clap round of applause.
Oh, here we go. That
he actually had a few of the series correct this year.
It's true.
So
this was a big comeback performance for you. This was comeback player of the year.
The wikis are working. The wikis are working. So congratulations, Eric. It's almost like a Stanley Cup victory.
Listen, if I got one series correct just by throwing a dart against a wall and hitting a cue card, I would be doing better than last season.
Are you admitting your picks were based on dart with cue card?
Hey, all I know is last year, with all of my hockey knowledge and watching the NHL Network, who also got everything wrong, I did very poorly. This year, I went like this, and I put the logos up everywhere. I put my eyes like this. I threw the dart, and whatever it hit, I said, let's pick that team. And so far, I'm doing a lot better.
There you go. All right. So for this last segment here, so we can pretend that we actually talk about cards, it happens. We did have a little discussion beforehand that we thought would be kind of fun. So I talked about the last couple of weeks. So I'll set it up quickly and then we'll get right into it. So we talked about the last couple of weeks that I'm doing a little bit of whale hunting right now. And I was able to pick up a nice card that I'm looking forward to showing once I get it in hand. But right now I've purchased it, I've paid for it. It's got to go through eBay authentication, which means they'll look at it, they'll make sure the card is printed on both sides, and then they'll move on. Send it along the way. But that's still a delay. That's still a little, stop in the process while they look to make sure it's printed on both sides. So, that's very good. That's for the PMG in a discussion we had on Friday. We can talk about that a little bit more next Friday if we get another update. But the point is that, so it goes through the authentication thing, goes over to ship my cards, and then we'll have a nice ship my cards mail day. That should be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to it. There's going to be some cool Medano cards in it, but also some stuff from the Dennis PC and some nice cards. There's some nice cards that I'm looking forward to getting in hand. That's going to be fun. Look at you, Eric, working on your teeth there, having a moment.
I just, the dentist PC, it just makes me want to.
Yeah, you need to floss. You need to brush and floss, Eric. Don't forget to brush and floss. So it'll be a lot of fun when I pick those up. But what's going to be an important piece is that we were talking about that kind of thing. But one of the discussions that we had, and we also had a discussion with Victor on the live show where we talked about, one of the things we discussed kind of on the side when we were finishing up the show was that I like to filter now, especially now. I've been collecting long enough where I filter through my collections and I ask myself, what do I really want in my collection? And Brandon had a good example because he has a Willie Mays rookie. Well, he had, past tense, a Willie Mays rookie that he has been able to sell. And he was able to get a pretty penny for it. But the concept, the general question, Eric asked it, and it was a valid question. It's like, okay, so you've got this very nice, iconic card, this great rookie of a Hall of Famer. Why would you sell such a card? And there's a lot of ways you can take this. And I did the same thing with the 52 Bowman mantle. I had a 52 mantle once upon a time, and I sold it. And why would I sell such a card? Well, it didn't fit what I was doing. Even though it's a very cool card, for me, it wasn't just having a card that, in this case, didn't fill any gaps. It was just like, oh, it's a cool card, but just having it for the sake of having it did nothing for me. Whereas opposed to even this Dennis PC card, like when I show it, it's going to be like, oh, that's a cool card, but why would you spend this money when you could be buying this instead? And that's the fundamental underlying question. Well, why would you sell this iconic card or this desirable card that a lot of other people want and then collect this other stuff? The answer is depending on what your goals are as a collector. So that's kind of key. So Brandon, do you want to take it away for the Willie Mays and talk to that piece, and we'll discuss the general topic?
So Eric is correct. It is an iconic card, but let's dive a little bit deeper into it because I've sold more than just the Willie Mays that many folks would be adamant that I'm stupid for doing so, but that's just personal opinion.
Would anyone say that you were an ass?
No, it wouldn't be ass. They would just say I was stupid.
Oh, okay.
Some
people
or have the question of why, right? Why? And I want to first clarify, none of this is for financial reasons. I've been able to, over the past, few years, pick up some cards that I never thought that I would ever own. The Ruth, the Mays, Carlos mentioned a 52 Bowman mantle. I had one of those. Clemente rookie, like there was a lot on the list. And one might wonder, well, why would you get rid of them? And this is where I think changing, or not really changing, but evaluating your reason, I think is the best way to put it, or evaluating your why of the hobby. And let's keep in mind that if you are doing this as a hobby, it should be meant for fun. It should have meaning. And as I was, evaluating where I was, what routes I had taken, there was some things that was out of character for me. Before the pandemic, I was very Eric-like in the way I collected, so to speak. I bought cheaper cards of players and the teams I watched and enjoyed. I didn't worry about the iconic stuff, or the stuff that gives you that guilt of spending the amount of money to obtain it, right? Um, and freeing up funds from the craze of the pandemic allowed to go make some of them purchases. But looking back on it, it was like, why did I change my character? Just because the opportunity presented itself, because it was fun to pick up, my Nationals guys, or the Jason Robertsons, or Soto, or Michael Taylor, Robles, all of those guys. That's where my fun exists. And I also evaluated other things in my collection, and I kind of shared this, and to kind of shorten the whole reasoning up a bit. And I mentioned this when we had the discussion with Victor. I don't feel that we need, as collectors, we don't have to have the rookie. There's a lot of other things out there that can be iconic, or maybe that we even like more than the rookie card. That is a card that is limited in choice. It's the only one, right? The Rookie of Mays, 51 Bowman. You don't have any other options. And although today there's too many options, I don't feel that has to be the card we have to have in our collection to be able to enjoy Willie Mays, or Hank Aaron, or Clemente, or Ruth, or whoever. And I'm going to show this piece because I talked about it earlier, and I've showed this before, but this is way cooler to me than the 51 Bowman Willie Mays. And this piece is not for sale. It won't be for sale. But this is
For the audio folks, can you say what it is?
It's a 1954 comic, The Amazing Willie Mays. It's graded by CBCS because it is autographed. And the cool thing with this is I have provenance from I think it was a sports writer. This was like a promo copy from the publishers. It's signed. It was authenticated by PSA DNA back when James Spence was there. So kind of like a dual thing there, because James Spence was there. And then it's also obviously authenticated CBCS. It's graded a 7.5 for a 1954 comic, which is pretty impressive in its own right. And the autograph, like, you find a Willie Mays auto that's more bold and beautiful than that. But anyway, this I got at a fraction of the price of what that Bowman cost me. And this piece is just, I display it up there and I just love looking at it. Everybody has their own preference. Some people go and want to complete the Hall of Fame checklist, or they have a set registry, or, this perception because of the Beckett's and what we grew up, or maybe people grew up watching Willie Mays back in the day. I obviously, jokes aside, people thinking I'm old as, Moses, I didn't ever get to watch Mays play. So for me, it's just collecting pieces of a player that you've heard stories about. But outside of that, the connection isn't there. So I can choose what I find more appealing in my collection. And, Carlos mentioned tying up hobby funds. Those cards aren't cheap. And it gets harder and harder and harder to shell out the thousands of dollars to keep adding the piece to the puzzle. And a lot of the collectors of those iconic pieces are always like, but it's not about the money. Stop fooling yourself. Like, you're collecting them because of the value there, or you wouldn't say that people collecting ultramodern are stupid because the value isn't worth what they're paying, right? You're literally contradicting saying that this is worth spending the money on if it's not about the money. So I've just made my personal choice to collect what I want in my collection. It doesn't have to be the iconic card. I am also happy with maybe Bowman did the chrome refractor version of the Maze
Yeah, the
rookie.
reprints. Yep.
Yeah, I think it was
Love
like
those.
01 maybe. I have one of those. They're nice. They're nice copies of it, and it's the
Yep.
same picture. So
Yeah. If you just want, if you
that's
want the
just the
look,
direction.
if you want the look, it's an alternative option. Yeah.
Yep, at a
So
much
let
cheaper
me touch
price.
on
And
one thing that plays off of exactly what you're talking about. Since we've done the hashtag scholarship tonight, why don't we'll do a little more hashtag scholarship? Why not?
What the hell?
So let me share this one. This is a definition from Investopedia, but you can find it in other places. But I'll use this as one example. It's focusing on business, but the concept's the same. So I'll bring it over into what we're talking about here. And the term is opportunity cost. Big one that I'm a big fan of. I've talked about it in the past, but I'll quickly reiterate and give you the definition here, and then we'll talk about how it plays into what he's talking about. Opportunity cost represents the potential benefits that a business, an investor, an individual consumer misses out on when choosing one alternative over another. So what that's implying here, what it's talking about is this. We've all hashtag invested a lot of time and money into our collections. Anybody who's been a collector for a long time has done that. By the way, what is a lot of money for you may be different than from me, may be different from the trillions of dollars that Eric has spent on Reggie Lemon cards. Literally trillions. Like it's ridiculous. It's the gross domestic product of a small country. Just on those.
Another one came in today.
That's what I'm saying. It's heinous. It's an addiction. It's an addiction. But the point is this. The point is this. Every dollar that is spent on those is a dollar that could have gone to something. And I'm not talking about necessities. Forget that for a moment. I want to make sure we're focusing here. I want to focus on the hobby portion of it. Let's say mortgage, rent, whatever is paid off, the electricity bill's been paid, all this is done. We're talking about disposable income here. You can spend it at will. You can set it on fire if you want to with impunity. It's fine. But every dollar you spend on one of those, whether it's for your hobby or not, you buy this one, you can't buy this one. Because the dollar only goes and can only stretch so far. You can only push it in so many different directions. So if you have this dollar, you can choose to purchase this one, you can choose to purchase this one. No judgment, both are fine. But the point is you're making a choice. And by making the choice to grab option A, you're skipping out on option B, C, D, whatever other options are available to you. And as a collector, we make that judgment call all the time. So going back to talking about the Willie Mays, it's a great card. If you're working on the 51 Bowman set, it makes all the sense in the world because you need the maze in order to complete the set. So it stands to reason, having the card makes sense, right? If you're a big Willie Mays collector and you want to have the run of Topps and Bowman Willie Mays, again, it makes total sense. Well, then obviously it fits a theme, hang on to it, right? But if it's just a cool card and you're sitting there going like, okay, however much money you spend on it or whatever equity it represents, but then there's other item that you might be interested in that totally fits into your collection. This other player collection you're doing, or this set that you're working on, or this other project you're working on, and maybe that card is $500. The Willie Mays was $2,000. I'm just making up numbers for the sake of argument, but it's $2,000, and you could get $2,000 for it. Well, the equity to get this other item is right there, but you'd be moving on with the Willie Mays. You're right, but what is the Willie Mays doing other than sitting in my box? I can look at it once in a while. It's a cool card. There's nothing wrong with the card. And if you want the card, well, then hang on to the maze because it makes more sense to hang on to. You've already got it. So you don't have to go track it down. But if it's not fitting any category, it's not fitting any theme, it's not fitting a section in your collection, and you're not getting any particular extra enjoyment out of it, well, then you're missing out. You're literally holding this equity that could have been used towards something that may provide you that enjoyment that you're looking for. It may fulfill a desire to work on a project that you're working on. It may get you closer to a destination. Go ahead.
And take it out of even the level of Maze or the Maze rookie or thousands of dollars, whatever. That goes with any card, right? And I think we as collectors are constantly reevaluating things amongst our collection. We're changing things constantly. Eric, the only constant that I'm sure there's others, but the main constant that we ever hear really of yours is your 69 top set, right?
Yeah.
And then you have your Reggie collection. And obviously you have, a few other bits and pieces here and there that you share.
Bill Buckner's Super Collection.
Yeah,
but only from 86.
Hal F. and Gil and stuff. But
absolutely, no doubt.
Overall, you are, although it might be pieces around or players, you're focused on them. And you're not going all different directions. And And I think we all, Carlos has said he was working on a mantle run and decided he didn't need all of them, or he's worked on specific sets, and we all are always reevaluating things that are in the collection, and it's going to progressively get better. Otherwise, you're not a collector. You're at that point, I guess, a hoarder. I don't know. But we as people change, and maybe, hell, maybe I don't want this John Goodman card anymore, And it doesn't matter necessarily the dollar amount of it or the iconic nature of it. It's just simply, why hold it if it's not something that I'm enjoying? Or
So you're saying so you're saying Mary Kondo the thing, if it doesn't spark joy.
yeah, or if it's, I mean, don't get me wrong, I didn't hate owning it, but
Secretly.
it wasn't. I'm back to the basics on what I realized was the most fun in the hobby for me. What I really enjoyed coming in, and it's not what fits. I mean, y'all seen the conversation when I was telling y'all that I found this on eBay. I mean, I believe we were live on a Friday night, and I was talking about that. This popped up. This isn't crap to 99.9% of the people out there. But for me, this was a freaking awesome card that I finally was able to secure. So,
And for the audio folks, it's a superfractor of
Michael Taylor.
Thank you. Just want to make sure we're taking care of our audio guys as well. Come on. Got to show some love.
But it's just, that's the realization. That card sparked so much excitement for me. It doesn't have to be a 51 Bowman Willie Mays. You knocking an autograph off that maybe you didn't have or whatever, that sparks an excitement for you, whereas 99.9% of other people probably don't care. And I think that's what makes this hobby, or any hobby really, special, is because we all do and value things, not even monetarily, but like personally or passionately, in different ways. And that's what's most important. It's not about having the biggest, baddest, most expensive collection. Right. It's having the stuff that means something to us.
And I think you're 100% right. There's no argument whatsoever. Collect what you like, how you like, when you like. And like I think I like the way you said, why should I keep something that doesn't make me happy? Right? Perfect. Sums it right up. And then you just summed it up even further with everyone does it different. And I think we need to respect that more in people's hobby instead of calling people out for doing it wrong, right? Because there's a lot of that in the hobby. Yeah, you're doing it wrong. That's stupid. Why would you do blah, blah, blah? I will respectfully say that I do it different than you. My mentality and how I see collecting might be different than yours or Carlos or Bobby's or Yannick's or even that guy Brad that I don't like to talk too much about.
Look, you will collect the Alec Manoahs and you will like it.
I will not. You can't make me. I like what makes me happy, and I'm not competing with anybody. I don't have the finances to compete with the internet, okay, or with certain people that I know. I stay in my lane, and what makes me happy is knowing that I have a piece of history. I have something worth value, and not that it's worth 20,000. It might be worth 300. It might just be worth $20, but everybody wants it. It doesn't matter. It's I know I have something important in the history of the hobby. I hate baseball. We've been over that a million times. I think I just can't say enough negative things about it.
Except for Bartolo Colon, because everyone loves Bartolo Colon, and I will hear no different from you.
He is an interesting fat man, isn't he?
He is glorious. He is peak athleticism, and I will not hear any Bartolo Colon slander on this show.
But I will give you that Bartolo Colon
He's a national treasure.
And David Wells are just two of the finest, most fit baseball players in the history of the New York Yankees.
You should aspire to such heights.
They are that just epitomizes how baseball players are not athletes. But anyways, we move on. It would be fantastic to own Willie Mays' rookie card. That would just, I hate baseball, but to know that I had that in my collection and not having to get rid of it for financial reasons, like, you got this much money into it, honey, and the mortgage is due. Get that thing out of here. Not having to worry about that. I would love having that in my collection. I'd love having a Babe Ruth, a Lou Gehrig, Hank Aaron, Jackie Robinson. I would just go bananas for.
Jackies aren't going anywhere, just to clarify.
The what?
I said my Jackie Robinson collection, those aren't going anywhere, just to clarify.
I hate baseball, but know that I had those, that would make me happy. I wouldn't be trying to make a set. I wouldn't be having a Jackie Robinson collection. I wouldn't have a Willie Mays collection. But unlike you guys, I do like rookie cards. I think rookie cards are super cool. I think they mean something. I think they're important. I get a lot of joy in possessing them, collecting them, bringing them into the collection if they weren't there before.
Look, just because you friend zoned or acquaintance zoned Nick Foligno doesn't mean Victor's going to be your friend now. I see what you're doing. Like your angling is so transparent. If you were any more see-through, you'd be a window.
Okay. Yeah, it's all about Nick. Because
in this case, it's about Victor. Like you've given up on Nick. Now you're moved on to Victor with your rookie card sucking up. Like I see what's going on. Brandon, it's so transparent. It's so
while
obvious.
He's digging, I want to clarify one other thing too, because I appreciate all of the history of the cards and everything. Y'all, if you've ever watched me do the previews for the orders, okay, we have some people that send some amazing stuff, and I get excited and appreciate when that stuff comes in. Okay, so it's not a lack of appreciation or knowledge of acknowledging what those cards are, but when I was purchasing them, also, I want to specify this. I was doing it with the mindset of me being able to enjoy the hobby, but putting them away for my kids in the future. So, like, I would say I enjoy them today, they enjoy them tomorrow. The problem with that is, and now with what I'm doing, with the reselling and everything, I go to these estate sales or, yard sales and stuff like that. And in many cases, it's kids having to figure out how to get rid of their parents' shit.
Right.
And they're not having fun. And in many cases, they're not getting anywhere near what those items are worth. That also came into mind because my kids aren't into sport. Like, my daughter likes F1, but neither one of them would give two shits about a Willie Mays rookie card. So in the end, it would just be getting sold anyway, and likely not for what it was even worth, because they would have to know all about it and find somebody to give them,
I just want to pause you real quick. I think this is important, and we can have a whole nother discussion about this in the future. I think it's important, and I'm going to do a better job of it myself after this conversation, of knowing what the top 5, top 10 things are in our collections. Okay. And making sure our loved ones, our benefactors, have instructions for those 5 to 10 things. My wife is not going to know what the hell to do with this.
Right. And it's going to be a headache.
She's been told to call a certain person, have them come in. My belief is that she'll be treated fairly. Take the check, do what you want with it. Okay? She's not going to get dollar for dollar. Just take whatever the check is, get it the hell out of the house. Go buy yourself something pretty. All right? To wear to my funeral. But I think it is smart of us, and it's our responsibility to at least say, okay, what are the 5 to 10 biggest items I have, most important items I have? Okay. Don't bother sitting your daughter down and saying, okay, see this card? She's going to be like, I don't care. Leave me alone. You leave instructions. You leave, you leave a notebook with, it doesn't have to be 20 pages. Just real quick. This Willie Mays card I've left for you. It is worth $6,000. Put it on eBay. Put it in an auction house. This is the auction house I would suggest. This is what it's worth. Do not let someone come in here and give you $20 for it. If some scumbag wants to come in and rip your family off for everything else, it may happen. But make sure those 5 or 10 things, a Babe Ruth card, Jackie Robinson, Willie Mays,
Hal effing
Gill. Those 5 to 10
here's the
are protected.
Not to interrupt though.
Instructions.
Here, I'm going to tie into what you're saying, but then I'm also going to go back to something Carlos mentioned earlier. Okay. I get your point, but you work at a shop. You've told stories of people coming in.
Yes.
And not understanding the values and all of these things. And you can tell somebody this is worth something. And the date that you're writing it down, it might be worth that. But who the hell knows when something happens, first of all. Second of all, like Carlos said, with his investing terminology or whatever, you can take money and put it into other assets. A Willie Mays rookie today is X amount. What is it going to go to? It's probably going to stay pretty stagnant. And you could put money into other things that grow. So there's different options there. This is more of, again, getting back to the basics of it being a hobby, not worrying about how much damn cash flow I have tied up into cards because of this brilliant thought that I was going to buy it and enjoy them today and give them to my kids later. It's just about having fun. And, there's still a good amount of pieces here that they could do something with. But I'll be honest, as dumb as this sounds, I've told y'all I've bought more cards this year than I did all of last year from the refocusing. And I am having more fun in the hobby now because I am back to what I was doing 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago. The simple things, the stuff that I was having a lot of fun with. So for one little fact, I'm hardly grading anything. That's a huge rewind because I was like sending tons and tons and tons of shit in for grading. Now it's like, do I have to have it in the slab? There's certain pieces of it, I do, but that's even something that I've reevaluated. Can enjoy it in a one touch or even a top loader or a Z folio binder or whatever. There's a lot of different things that I've shifted the moving pieces of and have gotten back to the simplicity, the basics, and the fun of the hobby. And not
That
worrying
promotion was brought
about,
to you by Bobbles and Ball Cards, where you can submit your SGC cards.
Well, yeah, I'm not knocking anybody. No.
No,
I mean,
I just felt that. I just felt that after that previous sequence that you said is like, and that takes us to Bubbles and Baller cards, where you can get your SGC cards graded. Eric, I feel like that.
Yeah.
I feel like it's smoothly transitioned.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah, and again, this show is not to tell anybody what they should be doing or how they should be doing it. This is all what I'm doing, what Eric's doing, what Carlos does. You know, comment below, get the engagement, tell me I'm stupid,
Oh, yeah,
tell me I'm wrong,
Or an
whatever.
ass.
Call me an ass.
I'll be honest, just on principle, maybe Eric and I will be the ones posting it. It's like, oh man, that guy sucks. What the hell's he doing? He's
Go
like,
ahead.
What's he talking about?
Feel free. Hit the like button while you're at it.
What's the Civil War event talking about?
But no, the other thing that I've came to the reality of, one of the funnest parts of this hobby, it's not even the cards. It's the stories. You going up to the expo and having those memories or remembering that you got something. You could literally get rid of that Wayne Gretzky autograph you got and still have all of the damn stories and memories of it. And that's what you really remember. The card is just a physical piece sitting on your desk that you spent money on. But the story and the moments leading up to it is what made it even more special. So that's another thing I've just kind of brought into reality.
He's right. A Gretzky autograph, that's temporary. Recoiling in terror from a cup of mayonnaise at dinner, that's
I'm still Scott. And my therapist.
like I said, it's forever.
My therapist just raised her prices, and now I got it. Oh God.
Hashtag scholarship. It's forever. Forever.
Yeah, I'm never getting over that trauma.
See, the system works, Brandon. The system works.
Yeah.
Memories, indeed. So I think we'll wind her down on that. I did want to make sure we at least touched on one of the topics. So we had a lot more enthusiasm for the hockey discussion. The good news is, by the way, I'm going to timestamp this thing. I will spare the majority of you if you want to skip ahead, so I understand. I do want to put a button on this conversation. One other thing as well is that the next episode will not have nearly as much. I'm not going to spend a lot of time watching the Stanley Cup final. I'll probably watch a little bit here and there, but for the most part, I'm not super engaged.
Every second of it.
So it'll be Eric's job to tell us what happened.
Okay.
So he'll have to keep us informed because I'm not gonna. The matchup doesn't intrigue me. So I'll let it play out and I'll check in here and there as we go. But obviously we've still got until I think it starts Saturday. I think Saturday is when game one starts. So
yeah,
let it ride and we'll see.
NBA finals on Thursday, Stanley Cup finals on Saturday.
Yeah, we're approaching the end of the two seasons. That's going to be very interesting. That's going to be very interesting now, and then it's going to get quiet for a bit because then baseball is going to have it all to itself until football season starts. So we'll see. Well, but for us though, it is going to work out quite well because by the time that's all done, then we're probably going to be a month out of national. So the annual not national coverage is nigh.
Yeah,
is forthcoming. It's coming soon. So that'll be very exciting. Now, kind of to put a button on that conversation, the reason we wanted to talk about it is obviously it's a little bit different, kind of thinking your way through your collecting ways and in terms of what you prioritize. That's really what it comes down to. The opportunity cost was one component of it, but what we're talking about is prioritizing. We've all got the same restrictions, except for Eric, like unlimited funds. That's different. But the majority of us have certain restrictions. We got to make choices. And that's the underlying theme of all this. It's choices. You've all got choices. And you can still change your mind after the fact, by the way. You're not bound for that choice forever. You can acquire something and say, like, oh, this doesn't fit anymore. I joked about the Marie Kondo sparks joy, but at the end of the day, that's really what it is. It's like, does it bring you enjoyment? Do you feel fulfillment, or does it fit? When you look at it, do you put it on display and look at it? Like, is it that kind of thing where you like seeing it? Or is it a situation where it just kind of gets thrown in a box? I'm of the inclination where if it just kind of gets thrown in a box, then it's kind of it's first in line on the chopping block if it just kind of gets casted aside that easily.
Y'all have noticed, like, when I've done like the previews and all that stuff, the little display I have there, I always try to change it up. And part of that is because, and you've seen the posts, like, in the Discord and stuff, but the collection got to a point where I was getting sick of going through stuff and being like, oh, I forgot I even had this. You know,
Yeah.
if you're at a point where you have so much and it's like, oh, I forgot I even had this, obviously you need to start scraping some of it off and then going through and pulling out, all right, this I'm never letting go. This is special, or, you know, this, there's a story, whatever. And then some of the other stuff, just scrape it off so you can enjoy those pieces that have meaning. And again, I think we all kind of, you know, outside of Eric, I know he doesn't sell a lot. I mean, the man's got $5,000 in cardboard boxes in the picture, let alone this cardboard inside of them. So, you know, we see there.
Yeah.
Don't look over here. But no, seriously, this isn't this isn't to say what's right, wrong, how you shouldn't. Um, I do think it's a good discussion, a topic that I don't think is talked about enough. Because you know, most times people would probably be embarrassed to say that they were selling stuff like that. But I actually am. I feel like I've made the right choice, and I'm back into enjoying things a lot more. And it does have nothing to do financially. Like it's just simply why in the hell have them sit here if I want to get refocused on to what I was, you know, what I had the most fun with. So, but
Exciting. And now we'll leave you all as we all continue to chip away and work at our collections. And Eric works on building the master checklist of Bartolo Colon.
Yeah. Yeah, it's up to you whether or not you want to show those cards off or not, but I did get permission.
Yes,
so.
actually I do. This will be a lovely little bonus. So Eric is making reference to a Connor McDavid collector. So what I'm going to do is let me see if I can pull this up here and show you guys. Now, the trick is going to be to see if it'll let me do it in the way that works the best. I think I can. Now, one other thing I'll mention as well, I do want to thank everybody for the support on the most recent episodes. We did have a lot of fun. The live episode with Victor was a lot of fun, especially. It was also very much an impromptu, and it worked out very nicely that Victor was able to join in the conversation. So that was really good. And always stuff like that, if the opportunity presents itself, it's always nice. And I will probably be able to announce for you that we'll be able to do a live stream that'll be forthcoming as well later on. But that's something that I'll have to finalize the dates and times and everything. And I'll make sure that when we finally have the official word on that, then we'll be able to share it with everybody. Okay, here we go. So I was able to make sure. I had to transfer it over so I could actually share the pictures with you. So I'm not going to sort them out and put them in order, but I'll showcase a couple of pieces, a few decent items. So this will be mostly for the video folks if you want to check it out. So I'll share with you. So here's some stuff from our Connor McDavid collection. So first of all, here, 2020 Upper Deck Premiere, we've got the Mega Patch. You got to make sure you say it properly. It's very important.
Yeah.
Pro move. You got to say it correctly. So that one is nice. This one's in a PSA 7, but that it makes sense because, to be honest, the thicker cards are very tough grading wise. So some of the other one, look, if you go down SGC way or even Eric's favorite, Beckett, they tend to be a little lighter on the patch cards. They tend to be a little bit lighter on it. But here's the thing. If you're a collector of this kind of stuff, I've done that with the Brett Havres. You don't care. Especially if it's a really nice patch piece, you don't care. Your goal at that point is just to get a nice piece. And this one has got the oil drop on it. That's a very nice patch piece, especially for the Oilers. Second one here is limited logos from the cup, which is always great. Big fan of these. One of my favorite subsets. Let me see here if I can expand it a little bit for you. And this one, I believe, is from the year 2015, 2016. So 2015, 2016, I think was his rookie year, if I'm not mistaken. So I could be mistaken on that, but I think it's his rookie year right there.
16 is his rookie.
Yeah, so that one there is very good. So that right there is a, there we go. That's a little bit better. You can zoom in on it a little bit more. So that's the limited logos from a rookie year. So that's fantastic. Rookie year autograph. That's an awesome card. Big high end. If you know anything about the hockey card market and where McDavid prices are, this is a spicy meatball. Not inexpensive.
It's out of 50 too.
Absolutely. Here is the infamous Future Watch, one of the three. When we talk about the rookie cards in the hobby, obviously there is the Young Gun, there is the Future Watch, and there is the Cup RPA. But this is one of the three key pieces. And for McDavid at this point, a very nice card to add. Here you got one of the PMGs. So this one here, you got a blue version of this one. Very nice. And by the way, PMG, go take a look at it. If you look in the corner, this one's in a 3. Why? Because look at the corner. It's got a little bit of peeling, a little bit of scratch. The thing about a PMG is that the surface of it can be damaged quite easily and scratched. But I guarantee you, there's a McDavid collector that would still shell out a pretty penny for this just to have the blue PMG, because that's 2015
Those
Flair Showcase.
those were, I don't want to say cheap, but they were not nearly as expensive as they are today after the PMG.
At the time, they were basically dirt cheap. No, they were like super, because nobody was thinking about hockey. Doesn't have the legacy of the
3
PMG
years ago, I
with
think.
was it
Somewhere around 3 years ago, they were pretty affordable.
Yes. I was able to take advantage of that even with some stuff I bought on ComC that I was able to flip, just because the PMG, they were not expensive. People were not looking for them. And here is a nice dual autograph here. 15-16. Nice. This is a pro penmanship combos with Connor McDavid and Gretzky. So obviously both in Oiler uniforms. So that's huge. And then you got a rookie year McDavid as well, out of 3. So out of 3 with Gretzky McDavid, 2 on-card autographs, UD Black, when UD Black was still good. So that's a pretty good combo. So it's testament, and this is just a handful of cards that Eric was able to share from his friend's collection. Pretty high-end stuff. We're talking rookie year stuff here. Very nice high-end McDavid. It's worth at least $150.
Yeah,
maybe $160.
So his this is my friend Amit. He is a clubhouse friend. So other people that you guys know, that Tim and Amanda and Billy, all know Amit. We're all friends, and his Instagram handle is Runwithbulls23, I believe.
I do follow that account. I have seen that one before.
Okay, so let me just do a quick double check on that. I believe that is the case.
It's considering I just saw the card. The answer is yes. So I've got it right here. I recognize the card here. So here it is. Runs with Bulls, and you can see the Gretzky McDavid is right there.
Yep,
so
there
you can literally see it, and you can see the McDavid with the oil drop.
Yeah,
so you've got it there.
You can see all. Yeah, and you can see Amanda there, graded gamer, and that's Amanda, and so there's our friend Chris over there, Cardi C, and so all sorts of people in there. So
by the way, this one, Barry Bonds, if you look, that's a Barry Bonds Platinum Masterpiece 101. Decent card. Yeah, acceptable.
He collects some pretty good stuff, but so if anyone's interested in checking out his stuff, it's like I said, it's Runs with Bulls 23.
I'll include a link to it in the description.
Great guy. Lives here in Boston. I'm in the Boston area. He actually lives in Boston. I asked him if it would be okay if I showed those McDavids, and he gave me the permission. So I just wanted to give him the credit. So
sure.
But because we were discussing, and I know we're wrapping up, so we don't want to keep going, but we were discussing about how, people with big time McDavid cards are getting excited about this Stanley Cup final, and he is definitely one of them.
Makes sense. Go ahead, Brandon. You were going to say something there?
Yeah, since we showed the PMG there, I was just going to say, if there is a fan out there that would like to pick up a McDavid, it's the rookie that I have of him, and I was just curious what they're sitting at right now. But the base Metal Universe, the 15-16 Flair Showcase Metal Universe, I love the Metal Universe cards. It looks like you can get it in a 9 for $75 to $100 right now. So a pretty reasonable entry level price for a McDavid rookie.
Yeah, there's still a couple of brands that I think are still reasonable, but obviously it starts escalating as the players start going up a little bit. We had that with Crosby in the past, because as they started winning a couple of cups, he started having that as well. And there was different stretches. He came out of the gates hot, he and Ovechkin both, with that rookie class. And then they had the ebbs and flows. We talked about this with the Connor Bedard thing. Comes out hot, slows down as the players starts having to work their way into the league and ingratiating themselves and figuring things out and everything. And even if he starts putting up great numbers, what's that?
Then he gets his jaw broken.
Yeah. But what's going to happen next is even if next year he starts picking up the scoring in terms of goal totals and point totals, if the team isn't good yet, it'll come down. It's going to come down. Just even if he improves, it's still going to come down because you're starting to bake in all this other stuff. You're starting to try to bake in scoring totals. You're trying to bake in championships, and that won't be available yet. So it's his job basically to play well, and then hopefully the team around him coalesces. And then if you get that too, and then eventually it starts coming back up. This is the trend with a lot of these players. If they have the success long term, it's unfortunately every single one of them. Start high, drop, then slowly work your way back up. Maybe you win a championship, and then that gives you a boost, and then you go from there. Start building up the accounting stats. Standard pattern, standard operating procedure. You always start off too hot, especially nowadays. So a couple of things we wanted to talk about. So I think that'll be good solid show. Like I said, hopefully you were patient with us talking about it. We will spare you a lot of the hockey analysis in the next episode. So we'll be back to a more conventional episode. But with that said, you got Eric Sanderson DeOr. You can go and send him all your hot hockey takes and all your criticisms and the things. Send him 5-page long DMs. Do that. He always enjoys that. So appreciate that. Brandon, Bobbles and Ball Cards, and he is a known associate of 540 Flips. So you can try checking him out there as well. You may know who that is. The mystery is yet to be fully solved, but we've all got suspicions. So important thing, we want to check that out. We do appreciate the engagement. If you want to leave comments in there, feel free. By the way, comments, I would love to get some thoughts if you have about maybe things you're working on your collection. Maybe you're starting to call the herd a little bit, trying to figure out some items that you want to shift around, or do you just keep everything? One way or the other is fine, but I'm just curious if there's a little bit of that, that you're working on with your own collections. A lot of us are doing the constant evaluation. That's always a part of the game. To me, just reset, take a look around, see what's going on, what works for you, what doesn't work for you, what makes sense, and we all make those choices. And that's part of the game as far as the long-term collecting side of the hobby as well. So that's it for us this time around. This is episode number 79. We'll be back with episode 80 of the not longest running episodic, but on the Friday live stream will be the longest running episodic, whatever the hell that is. So we'll be back on that one. If you like the video, subscribe to the channel. Thanks very much. We'll catch you in the next one.